the personnel to make judgments about the fencing. And people have very definite opinions one way or another. Sadly, Friday, it just was so shocking to us. Here it was Good Friday. We were just about ready to enter in from as a person who was Catholic into in California into a period of the most holy time, and then the sadness of it all and the psychological impact that it has for people who work there, and that's why we're so appreciative of the Capitol Police for how they have protected us. But when we have the supplemental put forth, which will be soon, then we'll have a discussion as to what happens with the fencing and the rest. And people are listening and respectful, but also we have to be careful. And none of us, I mean, maybe some of us are security experts, but most of us would have to pay attention to those who are security and law enforcement leaders who had made proposals to us. It'll be soon.
Our next question comes from Manu Raju with CNN.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for taking my question. Given the resistance from Senator Joe Manchin for using budget reconciliation on this infrastructure package and just generally in the future, I'm wondering, in the recalls from Republicans to pare back the price tag on the infrastructure package, are you willing at all to pull down the price tag significantly in order to win over Republican support?
Well, the president has spoken very eloquently to this point, that he's there to listen to what suggestions people may have. But it can't be too small because what we're talking about now needs to be transformative, and it has to be big. I myself think we have to start with what this country needs. This country needs a major infrastructure plan, jobs bill that enables everyone to participate in how we build back better. And then at that point, then we'll find out how much money we need. I think what the president has proposed is probably appropriate, as we have some in our party who are saying it's not big enough, and we have others. I don't know. I'm not familiar with Senator Manchin saying that it was too big. I mean, I'm not up to date on his latest statement there, Manu, but I do know that what President put forth is what is needed. We need the roads and bridges. The American Society of Civil Engineers says we're trillions of dollars behind. And I say that the most expensive maintenance is no maintenance. And that can cause danger to bridges and the rest. So we need to do what we need to do, but we also have to define infrastructure more broadly than roads and mass transit. We've got broadband now. We have water systems that are 100 years old or more, wood and brick, lead in the water. We've got to fix that. And we've got to fix our school systems. We tell children that education is so important to them, to their own personal aspirations, to their community, to their families, to the competitiveness of America. And yet we send them to schools that are not even wired for the future, that are very substandard. That's a mixed message. Just if it's important, then make it important. Housing, we need much more in terms of housing stock in our country. And again, to have it be housing that is respectful of the needs of the people who would live there, especially, as I always say, for the children. So we have big needs. I myself would rather just talk about what the needs are. Where do we find our common ground to go forward? Hopefully we can do so in a very strong bipartisan way. And then we'll talk about how we pay for it. But I don't think we start with the money and say our needs only are related to how little we're willing to spend. No, our needs relate to the needs of our country. as President Eisenhower did. It was a national security initiative, and the economy was not good at that time, but he courageously put forth the interstate highway system to unify the country for security purposes, as well as being a great job creator. The legislation, by the way, was introduced in a bipartisan way by Al Gore's dad, Senator Gore, then Senator Gore of Tennessee. So no, I mean, again, we're willing to, always in legislation, you always listen, you always see where you can find common ground, but you got to think big, you can't think small when we're talking about the greatness of America.
Our last question will come from Jesse Hellman with Modern Healthcare.
Hi, thanks for doing this, Madam Speaker. So I know the changes made to the ACA subsidies in the American Rescue Plan were temporary. So what are the plans to make those permanent? Is that a priority for this year in an infrastructure package or not? Because there are a few more years until those expansions expire. Thank you.
Well, as you probably would figure, the Affordable Care Act is something I take very special pride in for our House Democrats who courageously voted for it. And that is since the just February, about 500,000 more people have signed in, and the enrollment have been in the extended enrollment period. So we're very excited about that. We're also very pleased that in leadership of Congresswoman Underwood of Illinois, legislation in the rescue package expanded those who would have access to the subsidies, so more people can participate. But many of the people when the enrollment were there even before our bill became law, so that was very positive. Probably in the families bill that would come next would be a time when we would, again, I don't want to clearly define what's in what bill and when they will happen and whether they'd be combined or whatever. But there are vehicles on the horizon, both in the jobs bill and in the families bill that will follow that, where we will address the healthcare issues, including what we do about prescription drugs, because in prescription drugs, you know, the issue of negotiating for lower prices has been a priority for Democrats for a very long time. In 6 for 06, forgive me if you've heard this, in 6 for 06, when we ran and won in 06, the first 100 hours on the floor of the House, we passed legislation that would enable the Secretary of HHS to negotiate for lower prices. Of the 6 bills, 5 became law. That one did not because we couldn't get the 60 votes then in the Senate to do that. So the negotiating for lower prices has been a priority for us. Would save about $500 billion to be used for whatever purposes, further expanding access to health care, other, shall we say, expansions that we may want to have, or could be used for other purposes. But right now, the taxpayer is paying far too much for prescription drugs as a matter of public policy, and individuals are as well. So when we first started this, it was about negotiating for lower prices for Medicare. Now we're saying those lower prices would apply in the private market as well. $500 billion. So I would say some of the health things may come into the jobs bill, but others in the family legislation that would follow. But again, bringing fund, as I said about education, nothing brings more money to the Treasury than investing in education. When we make these policy changes, which will be imposed by the industry, I'm sure, but nonetheless, the public has to know that this is about not only lowering the cost, but also reducing the burden on the U.S. taxpayer for public, for Medicare, et cetera. So it is a pretty exciting time. I'm so pleased that the president is taking the actions that he is. if I have one word to describe it, for me, what the president is doing is integrity. It's based on our decency to meet the needs of the American people in a way that is fair to the taxpayer as well. Integrity, using that word meaning oneness, it has a oneness to it, that we're all joining together to build back better for the people, and to do so in every zip code in the country. And healthcare benefits from so much of what we want to do in infrastructure in terms of clean air, clean water, broadband, in terms of how we have communicated on medical issues and the rest. So all of this has a broad connection, and we have to look at it in a way that has integrity, oneness, decency in terms of meeting the needs of the American people. So I hope you will all be safe. We be on the lookout for what we're doing with the National Domestic Workers Alliance for caregivers, because really people can't go to, if any of you had a child or children or a sick parent or someone, and you knew that you could go to work with the comfort of knowing that they were well cared for, it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference to people when they're hiring you, that they know that you are where you are. Jerry Brown had this expression in Latin, age quod ages, do what you're doing. So do what you're doing and not be worrying about other things. Of course, our hearts and our minds are always with our children and the rest, but if we know that they are safely cared for, or that our seniors are safely cared for, we can do what we're doing more in a more focused way. And that's good for your career. It's good for your family first and foremost. And it's good, I think, for our country. Thank you all very much. Stay safe.